The year is 75 BC. You've just finished your 18-hour shift toiling in endless fields and are enjoying your hard-earned piece of bread dipped into a little sour wine, before returning to your tiny flat above a smelly bakery. You are, of course, a Roman pleb. Although, if I just described your current life, then I'm very sorry. Despite the hardships as a pleb, you have one thing to look forward to. One event that gets you through the long days, and as you enter a massive stone stadium with 40,000 other screaming fans, you finally get to enjoy some good old-fashioned family fun. The Super Bowl of stabbing, the World Cup of wounding, the battles of the Gladiator arena. This is Roman Gladiators explained. Poorly. There are few things less romanticized in media than gladiators, and I mean, who isn't romanticized by Russell Crowe? Fortune, fame, and freedom made at the swing of a blade is ripe for dramatization, legends, and a bit of romance. But I'm not content to just take Hollywood's interpretation of what the Roman gladiators actually were. Not on this channel, no. No, here I do the barest minimum possible research and speak authoritatively on things that I have little to no idea about. The actual origin of gladiators, like many historical events, are up for some debate, but the most likely beginnings were as early as 3rd century BC. Where fights were hosted as part of Etruscan or Samnite funeral games, because what better way to honor the dead than to make them some new friends. The fights would be held during the funeral itself, and at first seemed to be more private affairs, until people decided they didn't like the blood of their slaves staining their rugs, and started hosting the funeral fights in more public areas, such as the forum or square. Naturally, these fights attracted onlookers, and disturbingly, it turned out that people liked watching people fight to the death. Like, a lot. The hosts of these games and the political class were quick to notice just how entertained the masses were by these spectacles, and said to themselves, deciding not to waste any time in monetizing this new form of entertainment. In 105 BC, Rome itself got its first taste of gladiatorial games with a state-sponsored event featuring combatants reenacting barbarian combat. And from there, the popularity of the games exploded. The religious and funeral rite origins kind of faded as public arenas and amphitheaters were constructed, training facilities were established, and money began pouring in and out of this latest fad within the Roman Republic. Gladiator games became so ingrained into Roman culture and politics that any aspiring politician or one who wished to remain in power was pretty much required to participate, either by hosting games themselves or sponsoring combatants. Some politically savvy Romans even postponed the funerals of their relatives in order to best capitalize on an election season with a sponsored gladiator game in the deceased's honor, which I honestly just kind of find hilarious. In 65 BC, Julius Caesar himself even sponsored a ludicrously expensive series of games in supposed honor of his father, who had been dead for over 20 years. In these games, he used a massive 320 pairs of gladiators, all sporting silver armor. The extravagant display bought him a lot of public goodwill. Bread and circuses proved particularly effective, as the games apparently united all to come and enjoy, whether they be plebs or patricians, and entire industries were built around the games as well. Animal handlers, food and gladiator paraphernalia, training camps, and owners. It was very much like modern sport teams of today, just with less overall concussions for the athletes. Despite the huge popularity of the games, the gladiators themselves were for the most part looked down upon by all Roman citizens, with most gladiators being either slaves, prisoners of war, or condemned criminals. For every epic, legendary gladiator who rose in fame and freedom, there were thousands who died forgotten in the sands of the arena. Now, that's not to discount the epic gladiator trading card collection I'm sure some nerdy Roman kid had at the time. I'm sure they were very cool. But gladiators in general were considered less than people, and were dehumanized in a way that I'm assuming made it easier to watch them, well, kill each other. However, there were some notable exceptions, and celebrity gladiators were a thing, and were basically the rock stars and sports stars of the time. Gladiators could be hired out as bodyguards, and elite Roman women would even hire them out to guard their bodies very closely. Gladiators' sweat and blood was a hot commodity as well, and was used as a perfume or even aphrodisiac. That's right, Roman gladiators were the original gamer girl bathwater sellers in their time. Am I really gonna leave that in? Now, let's imagine you are a fresh new gladiator, all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Congratulations, you're probably gonna die. You would typically begin in one of the many ludi or schools within the Roman Republic, and here you would be trained for a particular type of combat. It was almost like choosing your class in the world's most dangerous and worst RPG, as gladiators specialized in different weapons, arms, and styles of combat. So, let's pick your class. First, the Mormillo. Wearing heavy armor and wielding a large shield and gladius, it's a good recommended starting class for a noob like you. With high protection stats and defense, this is a tanky, solid pick. The Thraxes, similar to the Mormillo, also wears heavy armor, but is instead equipped with a smaller shield and curved Thracian sword, trading a bit of defense for improved offense. A good pick if you want to deal some more damage. The Retiarius is a classic, equipped with a fishnet and trident. You can get your Aquaman on with this bold class choice. The Retiarius definitely has a steep learning curve, as you will be almost completely unarmored and very squishy, and is not recommended for beginners. The Esidarius requires a high animal handling skill, as you will be mounted either on horseback or chariot, and not much is known about this class outside of some artistic renditions, so you'll need to do some discovery on your own. The Hoplomachus is a medium armored class carrying a light throwing spear, small shield, and short sword. Your advantage will be your ranged ability, however be careful as you will most likely only have one use of your spear throw. And lastly, you can be the Cestus, who is equipped with, well, a cestus or knuckle dusters and pretty much nothing else. This is the most advanced and technically difficult class to pull off, but can earn you lots of style points before you inevitably get stabbed in the face. With your class picked and the bare minimum amount of training given, you're ready to step into the Colosseum, where around 50,000 Romans will gather to watch you battle. You'll be matched against appropriate gladiators and maybe even animals, so learning the meta and weaknesses of classes will be critical to your success. Fortunately for you, and despite popular belief, many gladiator battles did not result in death actually. Gladiators were expensive to maintain and train, and it was in the best interest of the owners and the game runners to keep them alive and healthy as long as possible. Many times the crowd would even have a say in whether the defeated gladiator lived or died, with the infamous thumbs up or down gesture signaling to a singular judge whether the combatant should be spared or not. There's a little bit of debate if the thumb up meant kill or not, but the judge would then make the call and the result carried out. In addition to the Caesar-sponsored event I spoke about before, some notable gladiatorial matches within the Colosseum of Rome included a fight by Carpophorus, who famously killed 20 wild beasts in a single battle, naval battles in which the Colosseum would be filled with water and ships full of gladiators would recreate oceanic conflicts, and the infamous Roman Emperor Commodus, who dressed up as Hercules and fought and killed most likely drugged or wounded gladiators or animals. He is what historians officially refer to as a douche canoe. Despite the lasting power of the gladiator matches over many decades, there was of course a decline in its prevalence in the culture. This decline in popularity and total number of gladiator matches is due to many different factors, but overall, with the rise of Christianity, the decline of Rome itself, and the sheer expense the matches incurred, lost public favor and were eventually ended fully, with the last gladiator match in the Roman Colosseum taking place in 404 AD. However, there were still areas that featured some fights. Seen as barbaric and pagan, gladiators were phased out in favor of more theatrical entertainment and chariot races, with just a bit less stabbing. The legacy of Roman gladiators endures in modern culture, with numerous films, books, and other forms of media depicting their lives and battles to varying degrees of historical accuracy. But this history gives us a glimpse into the complex interplay of politics, culture, and human nature within the ancient Roman world, and now you somewhat know more about these fascinating historical things. Wow, that's a really strong ending, but this is history explained poorly, so you take what you can get. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing so you too can continue to receive a subpar education on random historical topics, and let's continue to learn poorly.